this idea that as long as we have every participant in every transaction prove their identity, and we can track and control every transaction through this totalitarian surveillance system, we will end crime. And in order to believe in that false idea of safety through totalitarian control, we condemn billions of people to poverty.
We're sitting at a historical crossroads where the future of money is going to be digital. We're seeing a concerted effort around the world to ban cash, to reduce the availability, the value, and the liquidity of cash everywhere in the world. We saw India demonetize the top 2 value notes they have. Spain is passing a law to make it illegal to make any transaction more than 1,000 euros in cash. Probably the 500 euro, 100 euro notes are going to disappear eventually. You're seeing this process of demonetization, of removing cash from the economy in order to funnel it all into banking systems that are under constant control and surveillance. This is a very dangerous future.
And that's usually because they want the taxation or they want the legislation. Either they see that money used by corrupt parties or they just use that as an excuse to control it.
The biggest criminals in the world have banking licenses of their own. They don't need to money launder. They own HSBC and that money launders for them. You know, the biggest money launderers in the world are the banks, obviously, because that's where the money is. The easiest way to money launder is if you have a banking license. So, of course, the biggest money launderers have banking licenses. These are excuses. What they want to do, of course, is, they say, taxation and corruption, but in fact, this actually increases corruption. So removing cash from an economy and putting everybody under surveillance doesn't mean that criminals can't use money anymore. Of course they can. They will continue to do that. They will always have means of doing it. It just means that everybody else is under surveillance. So you end up surveilling the innocent. What does that give you? That gives you political control. We've never had in the history of humanity the ability to monitor everybody's economic activity all the time. And to give that power to governments without question is extremely dangerous. It won't reduce crime, but it will turn governments into criminals. It won't reduce corruption, but it will increase corruption at banks. And it will put people at the mercy of a system in which, at a flick of a binary switch, you can become a non-person. Went to the wrong website, attended the wrong protests, associated with the wrong political party, expressed support for the wrong idea, off. You no longer exist. You can't buy food, you can't buy anything, you can't earn anything, and all of your money disappeared.
Because we don't give you a bank account. And since you can't use cash for anything, then you basically are a non-citizen.
You are a non-person. And what this will end up doing is it will end up putting the burden, again, on the most powerless in our society, right? The poor, those who don't have ID, undocumented immigrants, victims of human trafficking, refugees. These people are going to be suffering the burden to create this bourgeois illusion of safety and give massive powers to governments that certainly haven't earned the trust to have these kinds of powers. Criminals will have privacy. The question is whether the rest of us will. And so that is the thing. Criminals will use these systems. Criminals will bypass the rules. Criminals will bribe and corrupt officials, and they will bypass the rules. They will deal in gold or Rolexes or cars. In fact, at some point in the height of the crack epidemic, they tried to ban cash in Baltimore in the United States, and criminals switched to using Tide detergent as cash. Fungible, transportable, brand unforgeable, and useful.
Just crates of Tide, move it around different
Right.
warehouses.
There will always be criminal activity. That's part of society. Changing the way money works only ends up punishing the innocent. And so criminals will always have privacy. Brian, do you want to also have privacy? Or do you want only criminals to have privacy and only governments to have privacy?
The real drug financing doesn't happen in cash. It happens in millions of barrels of oil and billions of pallets of dollars transmitted through wire transfers by the banks who get caught again and again and again and again. And they pay a fine that is a fraction, not only of the criminal behavior that they profited from, but of the tens of thousands of deaths they've directly contributed to. And not a single person goes to jail. And at the same time, some people have the audacity to say that we need to end cash in order to stop crime. We have to understand, surveillance never stopped crime. Surveillance is the license given to the people who are on the top of that to control our lives. They will commit crimes. They will commit the worst of crimes, what I call mega crimes. Mega is the prefix we use for millions. A mega crime is one where, for example, you foreclose on 1 million homeowners and don't go to jail. That's a mega crime. We're doing surveillance and analytics to catch a petty drug dealer who's selling pot for Bitcoin. Who's doing surveillance and analytics on Lockheed Martin? Who's doing surveillance and analytics on the money laundering banks? Nobody. Do you know why? None of them ever go to jail. The regulators are completely captured, and the very system of controlling finance from above by having levers of power over the lives of millions of people, billions of people, of having the audacity to cut off entire countries and say, well, they're under sanctions. They're not privileged enough, they're not people enough to gain financial services. Guess who that attracts? If you build levers of power like that, the very worst sociopaths in our society are attracted like flies to shit to grab hold of those levers of power and destroy all of your freedoms as quickly as they can. We are building societies in which one bad election is the last election. And if you don't believe me, look at what's happened in Turkey, what's happened in Russia, what's happened in Venezuela, what happens every day to billions of people around the world. Let me end on a positive note, because you're probably a bit freaked out by all of this. You should be. This is serious stuff. Open, borderless, public, transparent, neutral, censorship-resistant, strictly private cryptocurrencies exist. They will not be regulated. They cannot be regulated. Not by committees, because they're regulated by mathematics. They're regulated by algorithms. They provide certainty of transaction. They provide programmable customer protection. They provide reputation management. They provide access without identity. They give billions of people, eventually, not just a bank account in their pocket, but a bank in their pocket. They democratize the function of banking and turn it into an app that everyone can access without vetting, because they've already pre-vetted. They have agreed to download the software that follows the rules of consensus. And that is the only vetting required in these systems. But we shouldn't allow that. We did. But we can't have people make anonymous transactions. They will. But we must regulate this. You can't, and you won't, because 6 billion people need this. Should we regulate crypto? How much should we regulate crypto? Who should regulate crypto? Fuck that. Crypto is about providing universal basic finance to whoever needs it, everywhere in the world, whether we like it or not. And what will people do with universal basic finance? What they've done for millennia with access to cash. They will build a future for their children.